Hello, all. And this is going to be a sort of discussion, a sort of yang to the yin of uh, the critiques I've been offering in some of my later videos about kind of the fetishization that uh, we've undergone as in kind of industry sense, like a cultural industry that's came out of it, and issues of commodification of these kind of perspectives, if you will, of meek identity. And, I want to flip that. And just like I've undermined most of these sort of racial dialects with, you know, positing that we are the kind of results of these kind of, there's a synthesis of us being the anti colonized groups, as we're kind of abstracted altogether, and the colonizer of Europe, which of course is another abstract form. But nonetheless, if we're going to entertain it, I kind of like to shift and take these narratives and kind of do my own thing with them, and usually undermine them in my own way. And so, just like I did with that Franz Fanon video, I kind of want to get back to that and talk today in particular about Cinco de Mayo, which just happened 2 days ago, and some of the discussion following it was kind of amusing to me. There was this kind of op-ed, I guess you would call it, and of course it was just a milquetoast neoliberal kind of take about racial awareness, and why if you want to enjoy Cinco de Mayo, don't go after these vulgar stereotypes and these reductionist viewpoints of their so-called culture. But I think, just like how Franz points out, and kind of in an esoteric, resentful kind of way, points out the kind of the social angst that goes with the minoritarian kind of view in this Western experience, and kind of the fixation of judgment from the white colonizer, if you will. And this article ultimately stems from how it was a female author, I'm sure, of how actually, I'm pretty sure she referred to herself as a female, but she it's all just kind of like this worry, this angst about being reduced in this white school district. And that kind of stems from her ultimately, in a way, kind of asserting, like, yeah, it doesn't matter if kind of these stereotypes are true, in a sense. Like the sombrero has a long storied history with our culture, with the mariachi and so forth. These it's not like these objects aren't, like, true, in a sense. And it's just the constant fear and worry of what could be done, in the wrong hands, if you will. But that doesn't just come from her own intellect. That comes from a kind of European, Eurocentric idea. This is exactly how a sort of an introduction to kind of the European world, in that kind of way. It makes sense exactly why we would be this kind of resentful, kind of anti-authoritarian attitude, because that's part of the kind of European struggle that brought about their own cultures, and having their authorities replaced by outsiders constantly, especially the Anglo. And a thinking person and a well-educated person, a humble person, would realize you're the assemblages of these kind of events. But nonetheless, you have to peer in between. We can't just look at ourselves as these results of these so-called battles from people that we truly could not understand, in a kind of in an Evolian sense that I kind of brushed up on in a recent video about the Aztecs. We can't really, especially in this kind of democratic understanding of the world and the nation state, the spirituality of the war, as he points out, is totally stripped away. So, to kind of brush up on the kind of race critical points that were being shared on Cinco de Mayo about, concepts like this being a day of revolution against the colonizer, and the glorification of that kind of revolt attitude, obviously meant to intimidate in some cases, that I kind of saw. And I think that's kind of a reduction attitude of war itself, to take these kind of novel experiences, the spiritual reality that comes with warfare that we will not experience as the suburban outcome of these great wars and conflicts. That's to kind of miss the point. And I think that kind of comes, there's a really good stuff on Twitter yesterday, some feisty takes that I was sharing, with BAP, of course, in particular, and the kind of masochistic attitude of the American minority, and they've kind of this kind of abstracted away of identity. Of course, there's different, when it comes to Black Americans, obviously they weren't given a culture. They don't have an origin story other than the material story of the slave trade. They're a people of no land in that kind of sense. The X and Malcolm, you can't go back from America. He dismisses that, and didn't really appreciate. I remember I did a kind of bibliography kind of thing on him back when I was in school, and he didn't really kind of appreciate this, kind of, I'm gonna go to Africa and be enlightened. I'm gonna leave America and go to Africa and get in touch with my roots. He's unrooted. That was part of Malcolm's whole contribution. And so I think, ultimately understanding that, this kind of othering of the othering, of acknowledging this sort of European othering process that was brought about, and concepts like assimilation and whatnot. You can't just, absolve that and wash away that, even the antithesis of that kind of dialect that would go to the complete contrary out of this, if you will, if you were to entertain that, would, in an anti-hero kind of attitude, complement this very colonized world that they so desperately want to get away from, but simultaneously they don't. We're constantly looking for this sort of acknowledgement from the white, more dominant culture at hand. And, this is kind of going into more of the quantities of color video that I had way back in the beginning of this channel. Political representation, you can go beyond just kind of the economic viewpoints that, libertarian economists talk about, and go more in a different, if you want to kind of look at it more in the perspective of the American family, for the Black community and every community. It's not, I don't know if there's any racial group that I can think of that's, going out there and there might be some very, very obscure subgroups, but there really isn't any race that's not in a free fall right now in America. You're in a declining civilization. You're in a declining ecology, and we're, all a part of this ecology, but yet the democratic liberal system kind of sticks us that, we're almost in this kind of segregated existence where we're all independent and we can all, everyone can kind of just exist in their own kind of zonal space. America has just, this kind of spacious kind of myth to it, almost in a sense that, there's just always just this agrarian space that I think goes back all the way to when the colonizers would look out to the west from the original 13 colonies. That there's just so much adventure and kind of like seeing nature in that way. And that there also is to kind of be a nuance, bro, if you will. The European it wasn't exactly monolithic to suggest that it was just all brutality from the start. Of course, there's always been this kind of fetishization of the other that the European brings about, where they're always kind of having this, they understand existence in a different way than we do. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's wrong, of course not, but I think it's a privilege and kind of depreciate your own existence simply out of spite of your own reservations of the Eurocentric kind of model, if you will, isn't necessarily redeeming in that kind of aspect. I don't think it's really authentic. The kind of noble savage myth that you kind of see among liberals. And I think a Cinco de Mayo, which is just a psyop to get everyone kind of drunk in the middle of the week. It's just kind of laid out with spring break and college academics, funny enough, in my opinion at least. Fun fact, apparently beer sales are higher on Cinco de Mayo than the Super Bowl itself now, which is that's incredible to me, considering how some of my own Super Bowl parties over my life. But I think it's kind of interesting, this this sort of fixation on being reduced down to just foods and spices, and yet there's kind of always that smack back at the Anglos about, oh, you conquered the world and you don't know how to use spices. But that kind of to kind of flip that, if you will, to say this kind of fantasy of, well, if we never would have had the colonizer, we would have built all these great civilizations, and it's not usually that far off from this sort of same, everything's kind of seen in this objective of true attitude, so we would have all ended up in this kind of same result, which is totally just fanfic. People have their own kind of truth, and I think if we want to talk about solutions or how to kind of abridge this kind of racial resentments in America and get away from that, I think fundamentally we have to understand that democracy and political representation is the antithesis of bringing that about. And I think I've demonstrated that several times and throughout this channel's canon, if you will. And maybe to kind of posit something new, perhaps, is as representation seems to go up for minority groups, it seems our creative aspects of actually being able to coexist with the greater something like a gatekeeping, right? You had to be really, really good, in these kind of more resentful, more gated times, to kind of earn your spot as a minority, because you kind of had to totally rely on that kind of utility. That was your only way you were gonna mesh into the greater culture, is if he kind of pedaled to the metal and brought the goods, if you will. And, now that kind of just wanting representation for the sake of wanting representation and saying this is just a utility good, misses the point of that kind of, overcoming and sort of, the pressure that comes about when the coal turns into a diamond, and that long, arduous process of it. You're not going to get that in suburban, this kind of unchallenged, no accountability, democratic system that ultimately, just like in economics, it's pointed out that this incentivizes bad attitudes. But, it's more than that. It's zapping creativity. It's bringing about this sort of complacity that, if you want to be really tough about it and, kind of say the kind of the truth of it, I only believe a true make or break social struggle, moment can only bring America back to its sort of if it even can. There's there's certainly that aspect to it. If it can't even be done, it's ultimately going to become from more assemblages and more of the strain of a kind of friend and foe politic that brings about the kind of merit and the caste system that's necessary to survive. And only in that time do you actually get the kind of harmony that so-called people or the aftermath of that. But then, of course, there comes this kind of decadence age that we seem to find ourselves in as well. And I think that really kind of nails home the point of this rant. And what I'm fundamentally getting at is these kind of holidays, especially like Cinco de Mayo and these kind of niching out in this democratic system of has reached its end. It can't, if we want to actually be honest and real about it, like we can't keep doing it in this sort of fashion. It's gone. That kind of the properties of kind of creative that kind of creative energy that went with it even has been deformed or needs to be brought about in a different sort of way. And I think that would be one of my invites to, and one of my warnings as well to perhaps my viewership is, looking for political representation. Take it from me as a lot of people who know me in real life watch this channel as well, and I think I've kind of beat it in their brains that looking for state answers, whether not just like a libertarian sense of your of trying to find it maybe perhaps in the market or whatever, but you're gonna have to think of really creative ways to try to bring about being and that kind of excitement that goes with belonging to a greater cause. It's definitely not authentic towards raising the GDP or my stonks or something like that. There's a void that we're trying to find, and I don't think it's going to come about if we're doing these sort of glorified one-uppings on white people as a sort of holiday, and everyone kind of has these separate holidays and balkanized attitude that comes with it. But as I've kind of brushed up on before, and I am kind of going about in a kind of circle now, but ultimately all of these resentments, these political resentments that we see fundamentally comes from a lack of honor for one, as Bap kind of pointed out. But a lack of honor and that kind of lack of integrity, it makes sense why you would hate the kind of environment that's shaping you, even if you truly resented it. Hating your own ecology, I think is just it's not very respectable. I think it's nihilistic. I definitely do not like that kind of past that I had, and think it's a bad path to go down to, and it will keep you away from living a better life, because 99.9% of these people truly aren't going to leave America. That it's funny to even think 4+ years ago when the liberals were threatening to just up and leave, and in many cases they could and they did. They have the capability of doing that, but they're obviously they're still around. So you can't just speak the English language, which appropriates all across Europe. There's foliage of all these kind of different, the French, the Germans. There's all these different contributions that that's more than just one swath of a colonized mind, and trying to destroy that relationship that could be formed not just by biologically mixed race person such as myself, but where you're in this this civilization. In many ways, anyone watching this outside of America is kind of in this client state with America. And this isn't to say that it's all just, comes about in America. There's a rich history of European peoples that came over here to, in a way, give that up to kind of create something new in America. And, going back to Cinco de Mayo isn't forward thinking. That's not going to be what abridges these attitudes. It's the forward thinking of struggle that's going to bring that about. It's not going to be these racial resentments and constant nitpicking at are we being represented right in this liberal democracy. Meritocracy and the kind of minoritarian attitude that I'm trying to build is not democratic. It is fundamentally illiberal, because it's kind of the understanding that merit is for the few, not for the many. And I think that would be one of the fundamental points I'm trying to get at. But yeah, this is just a little ramble video. I've gone on for almost 25 minutes. I have a lot of stuff to do over the next couple days, a lot of work to do, so I might not be posting again till sometime next week. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. I'll be back for the next one soon. I'll be shit posting on Twitter still probably anyway, so I'll catch some of you guys there.